Have you ever wondered how you'd go about building a fortress that could stand for 1,000 years? Well, today we're going to unlock the secrets of medieval castles, and we'll trace how they went from simple mounds of dirt to the kind of towering stone fortresses that basically defined an entire age.
Okay, so let's start with a problem. Imagine it's the year 1066. You're William the Conqueror, and you and your Normans have just taken over England. Now the locals, they are not happy about it. To control this brand new and kind of hostile country, you've got to build strongholds, and you need them, like, yesterday. You can't spend years building stone fortresses. So what's your move? The answer was actually a brilliant piece of military engineering, the Motte and Bailey Castle. It was cheap, it was effective, and, this is the most important part, it was incredibly fast to build. Let's break down exactly what that name even means.
So first up, you've got the Motte, and this wasn't just some little hill. We're talking about a massive, man-made mountain of packed earth, sometimes up to 80 feet high. And right on top of that, they'd stick a wooden watchtower, which gave the soldiers inside a perfect view of everything from miles around.
And then, connected to the moat was the bailey. Now this was the bustling, everyday part of the castle, a big courtyard protected by a tall wooden fence. It was basically a fortified village, with stables, kitchens, workshops, and places for all the soldiers to live.
And how they built it was just genius in its simplicity. First, you dig a huge circular ditch. Then, all that dirt you just dug up, you pile it right in the middle. Boom, you've got your motte. Then you just build a wooden tower on your new hill and slap a fence around the bailey. And that's it. Brand new castle, ready to go.
And that is the absolute key. Because it was all made from local wood and earth, a whole Motte and Bailey castle could be thrown together in a matter of weeks, not years. This is what allowed the Normans to so quickly stamp their authority all across England.
So yeah, these wooden forts were a fantastic quick fix. But, as you can probably guess, wood has a couple of major drawbacks, especially when you're trying to build something that's supposed to last and be attack-proof. What do you think those problems are?
Well, the problem with wood is really twofold. First, it rots, especially in damp, rainy weather. But way more serious than that, it burns. I mean, all it takes is a few flaming arrows and your entire fortress could just go up in smoke. Stone, on the other hand, is permanent. It's fireproof, and it's strong enough to stop giant rocks from smashing through. The choice became pretty clear.
And that brings us to the next big step in castle design, the Great Stone Upgrade. This was the moment they moved from building temporary strongholds to creating permanent symbols of power, fortresses that were designed to last for generations.
And just to give you a sense of how big of an upgrade this was, get this. The walls of a stone keep, that's the main tower, were often over 10 feet thick at the bottom. That's thicker than most bedrooms are wide. I mean, these things were built to be basically indestructible.
So, let's take a quick tour inside one of these huge stone keeps, starting at the very bottom. The lowest level was pretty much a giant storage cellar. This is where they'd keep all the food, water from a well, weapons, basically everything you would possibly need to survive a siege that could go on for months.
Okay, moving up one level, we find the entrance. Now, the doorway itself is a brilliant example of the builder's defensive thinking. It wasn't on the ground floor where it would be easy to get to. Nope, it was raised high up, and you could only get to it by a steep wooden staircase that could be quickly kicked down or burned if attackers got too close.
All right, heading up again, we get to the Great Hall. This room was the social center of the entire castle. It was this huge open space where the Lord would hold court, where everybody ate their meals, and where they had these huge feasts. Think of it as a combination dining room, courtroom, and giant meeting hall, all rolled into one.
And then, finally, at the very top of the keep, you'd find the solar. These were the private rooms for the Lord and his family. They were the safest, most comfortable rooms in the whole castle, and they offered a little bit of privacy away from all the noise and action of the Great Hall down below. So, building a giant stone box was a great start, but it just wasn't enough. The Middle Ages was basically a constant arms race. Every time a castle builder came up with some clever new defensive feature, an attacker would figure out a new way to get around it.
Because of that, castles became these layered defenses. You had moats, you had drawbridges, these heavy iron gates called a portcullis, and tiny little slits called arrow loops for archers to shoot through. The tops of the walls had that classic up and down pattern, those are crenellations, so defenders could shoot and then duck for cover. It was all about defense in depth.
Now, one of the most terrifying defenses were machicolations. These were basically murder holes, openings in the floor of the battlements that stuck out from the wall. They let defenders drop rocks, hot sand, or even boiling water directly onto the heads of anyone trying to break down the gate below. Yikes!
And let's say the attackers somehow made it past the drawbridge. Well, then they'd come face to face with a portcullis. This was a massive iron grate that could be dropped in an instant, trapping enemies in a kill zone between the outer and inner gates. It was a brutal, but super effective security system.
So, these square stone keeps seem pretty much unbeatable, right? You've got thick walls, high entrances, layers and layers of deadly defenses. But they had one major, critical design flaw. A vulnerability that clever attackers learned how to exploit. Any ideas what it was?
The answer is so simple it's almost funny. The corners. A square building has 4 weak points. Attackers, these specialists called sappers, could dig a tunnel right up to one of the corners, prop up the foundation with a bunch of wooden beams, and then just set those beams on fire. Once the supports burned away, the corner would collapse, bringing a huge chunk of the wall right down with it.
Now, this weakness led builders to start making round towers, which didn't have any corners to attack and were actually better at deflecting things like catapult stones. But even these smarter designs couldn't stand up to the next huge innovation in warfare, the arrival of gunpowder and the cannon. Well, it changed everything. For the traditional stone castle, it was game over.
You can see this whole story on a pretty clear timeline. It starts in 1066 with the fast and easy Motte and Bailey castles. By the 1100s, those are being replaced by the giant stone keeps. But then, in the 1400s, cannons show up on the battlefield, and they can blast those thick stone walls into rubble. So by the 1500s, the castle's main job as a military fort was pretty much done, and they started turning into these grand, comfortable homes instead.
So, in the end, castles just evolved. They went from being the ultimate weapon of war and control to becoming these beloved historical monuments that we see today. They really are a physical timeline, a window that lets us look right into the strategy, the engineering, and the daily life of the medieval world.
And that kind of leaves us with one last thought. The design of every single castle tells a story about the technology and the society of its time. So it really makes you wonder, what story will our buildings, our skyscrapers, our stadiums, our homes tell about us 1,000 years from now?